Well, hello again. It's been quite a while, but I've been trying to grow, and as usual, going to try and share this whole experience with you. Going to change tack a little bit this time to a mission of and a look at a spiritual purpose, and I think if you're going to grow spiritually, it's important to attach a purpose to that. So in the meantime, since I last spoke to you, I've I've gone ahead and I've written a poem on spiritual purpose based on all my readings and research and thoughts and analysis and practice. And just got to stress, by no means am I anyway getting this completely right or anything like that, but it's all about growing, it's all about sharing. And I'll show you the poem briefly soon, but just a few things to talk about. Is it's this whole process has been based on quite a number of books, and these books have been recommended by Jason Brashears, which is where I started my research and learning this time around. And it's we're first of all a lot of it's based on The Hidden Power by Thomas Troward, and this is part one of a two-part journey, and the second part is going to be based on the book by Annie Besant, which is called Thought Power. These have been amazing for me, and the part one that we'll be talking about today is the about part of the broadcast, and it's about your spiritual purpose and about how to get things right. And then when we look at the Annie Besant in part two, which is the main text, there are others that have gone into this, like there are also books by James Allen and He Thinketh and things like that, and a lot of other text. But I've sort of summarised and written thoughts and things like that based on these, and we'll get started soon. But I just wanted to say the idea of all of this, how it fits in with pattern breaking and manifesting and realizing that the whole trick is the psyop itself and getting lost in all the psyops of the world, and which are not real, part of a fictitious system and just there to distract us, to suck our energy, feed them loosh. And the idea is to build a spiritual platform, a higher level of consciousness, and make a platform for the next life. So when we recycled it, well, and then again, maybe this time we won't be cycled. In the words of like Matt McKinley from Quantum Consciousness, maybe we'll do enough in this lifetime that we'll get to go to the next construct, the next Dyson shell, the next sim, the next reality, or maybe become part of the infinite. Will we have done enough in this life that we get to experience immortality, the fear of that, until we realize what's going on, that we are immortal beings? And are we here just to experience stuff we can't in the infinite? Like the birds, like cuttlefish. And I mentioned cuttlefish based on a broadcast. Those who have been following will understand what I'm talking about. If not, you can go back and look it up. But a few weeks ago, I talking about signs and synchronicities and following what's happening. I thought I'll go down to the beach and have a bit of a swim with the kids, and just throwing it out there into the field. I said, show me a sign when I'm down there that just make sure we're in touch. Even though these days I just know for a fact we are, because things keep popping up. There are synchronicities everywhere. And I manifest things here and there. And as I was in the water, I saw these really small fish that I don't usually see, and I thought, well, that's a sign, no biggie. It's not a huge one, but I'll take it. But as I was getting out, there was a huge stingray that swam straight past us. We ended up filming it with the GoPro. And it was amazing because, like the cuttlefish, the stingrays had been popping up in my life everywhere. They'd been part of billboards on posters advertising the football team at Laurieton, the Stingrays. And there was... And stingray, we'd seen a lot of stingrays down at Shelley Beach recently, and they were just a recurring theme. And and as well, I was getting out, this massive stingray, just swam right by me, just to remind me. And anyway, I'll put up now the poem I wrote on spiritual purpose, and those who are well into this part of their learning in their lifetime will recognise and understand how these lines of this poem fit into the bigger picture of consciousness and learning and knowledge. But as we go through, and I've written quite a lot on, as I've collected notes and compiled them, I'll actually mention this poem at various times in the readings and me chatting away as to see where I got them and what they mean. So, it is so it will be. All the power is inside of me. Imagination, intuition, develop what I am. Draw from the infinite because I can. To manifest the world, I want it to be. I expand into spirit as it concentrates in me. My purpose is the will to find, balance hands and actions with thought and mind. All answers are inward spirit, then cause create. The outside man, effect to circumstance negate. My purpose embraces nature, filled with empathy. I am free, with beauty, to share with thee. Spiritual liberty. Fearless to power is the creative force. A straight path to can is to endorse. No doubt or fear, just faith and trust. Be one with source and make robust. Tunnel the feeling to vibrate with knowing. The self-known and knower, forever growing. So, truth relates to symbol recognition and their translation. And there's an inner side to things. There's an inner and outer side to everything. And this is what makes up truth. Knowledge involves more than the superficial, and it's crucial to reflect on the fact that the outer side of things results only from the principle hidden deep in the centre of that being. The law of life is the expansion from the centre by growth, according to a necessary order of sequence, of which the whole universe is the outcome. Life indeed becomes truer and fuller as we penetrate to the inner side of things, and perception changes and becomes visible from the interior point of view. Symbols are how we strive to represent spirit and man's life. It's related to this connection. The whole character of a man's life results from what he really believes about his subjects at stage, in what his mind has actually attained in regard to that. Once he knows there is more to know and makes use of the knowledge, order takes over the chaos. Once we realize there's an ordering power, that it's not separate to him, but the very centre of his own life and being. And I use the word his a lot because a lot of the texts refer to his and man. But it's not a sexist thing, it's just the way we roll. We know all those shenanigans are beyond our way of thought. A man's life must reflect the particular stage he's reached in perception of spirit and his own relation to it, so that as we approach a fuller perception of truth, our life principles expand with it, so the old bonds and limitations are removed, to enter regions of light, liberty and power. This is recognition of a symbol for a symbol. What something means to us that is ever changing, being further able to penetrate what inner substance means to us. This is conscious experience, the quality of life it exhibits in us. The nearer we approach to the actual experience, the closer we get, the more transparent the symbol becomes, so that the inner object can be appreciated. Symbols are symbols, and not the very truth itself, however. They represent a form of truth, just as the material exterior suggests a form of what's beneath it. The truth is the conscious experience, and how it has, it suggests a form that's beneath. The truth is the conscious experience, and how it has life within us, even though it is about the non-self. We'll get into the concept of the non-self. It's everything exterior to the self, as a broad term, but we'll have a look at that a lot more. There's always more truth. And as each layer is perceived as truth, at that time, what was true before does not become untrue. It is merely that the perception of truth has changed and all perceptions exist simultaneously. This is the law of growth. There's always something, interior to what was once held as ultimate truth. It's important to realize that this process will involve times of emptiness and dissatisfaction, But this is merely us grappling with the fact that spirit is pressing forward within us to discover the inner side of things, and it can express what we observe on the exterior. And this will be forever changing, but without which we can't fully discover the true nature of our inheritance of life everlasting until we're free. I find my journey comes in ebbs and flows of motivation and understanding and confusion. And it's just because we're pushing forward into new ground. So, there's a note, that freedom may be from this construct or panic room game that we've agreed to be in, which can only be achieved by connection to spirit, where the other self is linked to spirit in the infinite. We're not really here. This is a mirror program, a mirror reality. And let's face it, we are quite amazing as errant souls to even see beyond the programming that we're led to believe and fed from birth. We're fed the fact that we're mortal, useless products of evolution, and we're definitely not. Not that. The mere realization of this means to me that we have found our way out of this panic room simulated game already. We see the Dyson frame simulated environment for what it is, a quest to realize that we are not here at all. Our life light spirit has been placed in avatars with every form of dungeon programming thrust upon us so that we may never work this out, but we have. Life is at the root of all things, but not life as we initially recognize it in the form of manifestations. It is something more interior and concentrated. It is the unity of spirit, which is unity. It is that which has not yet been achieved, been diversified yet. It's like a cell that is yet to be differentiated, having no purpose until specialized. Life is a unified process that is yet to be manifested or brought into existence. We bring that into existence. It's in its innumerable manifestations that don't exist yet, that spirit will assume. It is all the undistributed powers, being as yet none of these, but all of them, potentially. It's the center at which all growth takes place by expansion in every direction. It is at that point which does not allow our power of analysis, the unknowable, unthinkable, unanalyzable. This involves the subject of perception and not knowledge, because knowledge involves relationships between things, objects, and as yet there are none, and all that is involved is the absolute. The innermost of all is absolute spirit. To come into the knowledge that this is our secret power, and enhance into the secret place of living spirit. Paradoxically, the unknown and coming into the knowledge of it. To attain the knowledge of that love which passeth knowledge. Knowing is the unknowable. Knowing the unknowable, this is knowledge, being the root of all, it's the root of all knowledge, is at some stage we don't, but then we do. Analysis should be placed on pure essence, being energy that knows itself and recognizes itself, but which cannot dissect itself, because it's not made up of parts, it's unity. But analysis must not lay stagnant, it must lead to synthesis. We could pull a piece of paper to pieces and let it blow away, or we could pull a piece of paper apart and build a thought image. The value of analysis is to lead us to the starting point of that which we are analyzing. What's the purpose? What is the purpose of what we're analyzing? So we may learn why its final form come from, what its center is and was and always has been. Analysis thus becomes synthesis, and the unknowable becomes separate from not being. We must resign ourselves to the fact that the root of all knowledge is the unknowable, but continue to learn from it and analyze it further. The further we discover the knowable, where the unknowable meets us again, where we accept our place continually changing based on our synthesis after analysis. And everything here begins at a living energy which defies definition or explanation, but always involves an inner and an outer. The innermost within of all things is living spirit, contains the potential of all outward manifestations, the so-called fourth dimension. Livingness exists in the not-self because there is an intelligent order throughout all of nature. There exists an intelligent order throughout the whole of nature, and all our science is a translation into words or numerical symbols of that order. This interrelation of order constitutes one harmonious whole, the living spirit, inherited in the heart of every vibration, giving it outward form, definition, characteristic, nature, Spirit is the root of all things, and then there is no other source from which it could proceed. And so spirit is intelligent and also responsive. Spirit knows, and the spirit being ultimately all there is, which knows itself and is bound to respond to those making connections with the higher degrees of itself and themselves. Spirit involves personality and is personal in nature, and we ourselves are manifestations of personality. The essence of spiritual nature on every plane is our personality. We built it. In ourselves, therefore, the higher the thought, the better the synthesis of spirit. It's forced to respond to higher levels of thought and synthesis, and into the manifested personally. And at the same time, spirit is bound to recognize its own these degrees. It must answer in degrees addressed by that individuality. And this is the basis of the power of human thought, to externalize itself in infinite forms in its own ordering design. The spirit of life must always be the goodness of life. This is the law of spirit. I found when I'm out and I'm thinking and I'm concentrating on objects, which we'll get to, I initially thought of expanding into spirit as like millions and gazillions of lines stretching from the inner side of my core, from my inner spirit. And then I realized it's even more than that. It's everything in a 3D surface. It's everything at once. And I'm starting to understand this notion of unity. Now, the state of awareness is called the void. And this is the infinite. It's infinite awareness in awareness of itself. The infinite existence. This is the creative force of all possibility and all potential. Infinite awareness in awareness of itself could mean that the oversoul or the benefactor, or whoever you want to call it, the spirit has placed connection between what we can recognize with our 5 sense limitations in the simulation field, and that we cannot in the infinite field. This only happens when we are able to decode what's out of range. And through better practice, we start to decode things that would not normally be accessible to us. And this is like an awareness of itself, which is an ever-changing concept to me. In the center of everything, where there is stillness and that exists, we can achieve a deeper level of consciousness, and hence the oversoul can better understand itself. The spirit can understand itself through different perspective. Maybe we are in this construct so that the oversoul can better understand itself by us reaching higher level of consciousness. And as an added bonus, when we learn how to do this, we're in a position to pass through, make our exodus from this realm and inhabit new constructs. Either pass away, our avatars die, and build a better platform for the next realm, and where we have different realities and better suited to do that. Once we'll become aware of our infinite nature and in a state of being aware that there is an infinite awareness. This is the awareness of itself. The law of spirit operates on the largest of scales, from the smallest to the most grand, and all universe. And the nature of the field it's unlimited. Like the vibrations of man's higher thought is far superior to the vibrations of atoms that make him, so is the aggregate of vibrations of many people. Surely they're potentially greater. If this principle exists at all, it exists universally, because the principle consists of 2 factors: the principle itself and the active factor. Each man, as the center of his own world, is himself centered in a higher system, in which he is only one of innumerable similar entities, like the atoms that make up our bodies, all vibrating together. But at the same time, infinite power of the system that he is within. That's the all-being. Therefore, as we employ the universal law of spirit to control our own worlds, ever moving forwards, we must also recognize it in respect to the supreme center around we ourselves revolve. This is not an individuality that's external to us. We are in a relation to the whole. There is a necessary and inevitable flowing of intelligence and power when we look to the infinity of spirit, of which our individuality is but a singular expression of the whole. Because in so looking for higher degrees of ourself, and the demand for vitality must, by inherent nature of spirit, be met by the continual corresponding supply of continual growing intelligence and power. There's no limit to this power. The there's no limit to this power and supply of this energy than what we ourselves put to it by our thought. Nor is there a limit to the purposes we make it, and how we use it in the grand law and scheme of things, which says that good things used for wrong purposes become evil. We must recognize ourselves as individual manifestations of the same spirit which expresses itself throughout the universe, and that's love. The realization will escalate to find ourselves to be a necessary and integral part of an infinite harmony of all being, not merely recognizing this great truth as a vague intuition, but as a logical and unavoidable result of the universal life principle which permeates all nature. Even the most advanced of us as yet have the faintest idea of what this place really is. But it's a place of power. Towards the higher modes of man's spirit's inmost nature makes him a lens which focuses the will of light and power on his own individuality as an inexhaustible supply, and towards the lower modes creates order. The individual rises to higher and higher powers of his own individuality, and because the infinite is infinite, there can be no extent to which the individual's power can be restricted. Because we are what we are, we may become what we will to be. So it is so it will be. And there's no greater power than inside of me. We draw from the infinite because I can. The word in our heart we realize as the center of our conscious being, I am. Using imagination and intuition to develop who I am guides us without limit, because growth is drawing from the infinite. I am what I am, and I may be what I will be. To incorporate everything like I am prosperous, I am happy, everything, but it comes back to the I am. Individually is merely just one of the modes that the infinite uses to express itself, and therefore I am myself, that very power that is inmost within all things. Therefore, the great unity of all spirit dictates that the infinite is not indefinite, because it is the infinite of myself, the same I am that I am. There is no inside without an outside. This is the law of polarity in different words. Everything attains completion by manifesting itself in the opposite direction to that which it started. And life is motion, and all motion is energy at different appearances at different points. And when work is done, has a different form from that which it originated. But when it reappears, the original amount of energy has not dissipated. That created energy is still there and still the same. This is the law of conservation of energy, which applies. Hence, we are different. We're a different form of infinite power. We originate from it, and the very power we seek, we're just different forms of it, of the same originating power. The I am in the individual is none other than the I am of the universe. It's the same power working in a smaller sphere. As a man thinks, so he is. Personal experience tells us that our existence is of two ways, by our power to act and our power to feel. And so with spirit being absolute, we are those two modes of livingness carried to infinity, feeling and acting. Every thought we formulate sends its corresponding vibration into the infinite of spirit, created there, similar vibrations, but of far vaster power, which sets in motion a creative force. Hence, we're continually creating for ourselves a world of surroundings as an accurate reproduction in complexity of our own thoughts. And that's what these texts talk about. They talk about how thought is produced, how we change thought, how we concentrate thought, how we better develop thought, and how thought fits in with consciousness, shapes consciousness, the looping with manifestation, and it's been a huge journey. Thus, persistent and higher vibrational thoughts create greater external effect to manifest the world as I want it to be. These thoughts must reproduce a principle of unity to produce a principle of unity. Thoughts are weak and have no power over circumstances, and the thought of power produces power. Thus, we need a unified thought principle or unified cause, which recognizes power directly inwards, towards spirit, and from here the effect will be recognized in the outside, bypassing circumstances altogether. So I have all answers inward spirit, then cause create, the outside man, effect to circumstance negate. If this energy is not used to build and create, it will destroy. Accumulated steam, electricity, water will cause damage, but utilized through suitable channels become useful source and become constructive power. Inversion. The inverted order must produce an inverted result. That means something like, you have a rotating wheel can produce electricity, but electricity used can rotate the wheel. The same power is capable of producing opposite effects. Answers in self and forever growing. Could this relate to our inverted world? Not only the power of spirit creating our power, turning our wills, and in so doing we generate the power supplied back to spirit, but also inverted realities doing opposite things as a result of the same power. Just food for thought. It is this entanglement which needs to be sorted to deliver real power and liberty to us. As a man thinks, so he is. Is Descartes, cogito ergo sum. Consciousness is subjective, based on personal interpretation, internal to the mind. And our external senses would cease to exist if it were not for subjective consciousness, which possesses what the external senses communicate to it, giving things objective, external to the mind, existence. Like a man who believes a tree looks like a person and speaks to it. As far as this man's concerned, the tree is human. Thus, every mind lives in a world which gives it objective reality. The visions we glorify in our minds, the ideals in our hearts, this is what we build our lives by, and this we will become. The first perception of the law of cause and effect is that the quality of the effect corresponds to the quality of the cause. And because all man's arguments are drawn from external observations only, at this stage of our evolution, we regard, not evolution as in the rubbish and deep state Darwin projection rubbish in our consciousness, in our mind evolution. We regard external acts as the only causes that may affect anything. This is the circle of karma. But karma can be negated through higher thought because external acts are not only causative power, but also pure thought. Thought allows us to create a new sequence of causation not related to past actions. We can use thoughts to produce any effect we want, passing beyond the notion of two opposites requiring reconciliation into a duality, where there is no opposition at all except the inner and outer of the same unity. We'd been programmed to believe that consequences in our life would flow from past actions. This is everything seen from without, but our mind has found us a way for this fatal circle of karma to be negated, which always falls short of perfection, because our thoughts can create new circumstances, new consequences, and this is seen from within, which do not rely on former deeds that were done at a time when we are spiritually ignorant. It's the thought which determines the quality of future actions, not the actions which determine the quality of new thought. So to balance hands and actions with thought and mind. We are expressions of the infinite spirit in an individual personality who has realized that man was never bound by former deeds, that divine power has intervened to rescue man by becoming one with him, that there is only one spirit with many modes of manifestations, and that the life spirit we seek is in ourselves. The power of suggestion is the hidden power that creates all things and works behind the scenes in the subconscious mind, and therefore its activity is not immediately recognizable, and nor are the sources from which it comes, but once attained can be used for higher or lower purposes. Again, it comes down to propose, my purpose is the will to find. Like an advertisement for any purpose we desire. The end justifies the means is the greatest perversion of truth, because the end may be a result of lower order motives. The higher the motive, the higher the action becomes. The higher thought generates higher actions. And this sorcery is the inverted use of spiritual power, and which we can never reach a heavenly state with this sorcery. It's we must generate higher order thoughts for higher motives along the way. Nobody's allowed to use suggestive power to injure another, which happens. And to injure the mind or body or wealth of another, we must come forth, my people, out of her, which refers to removing ourselves from Babylonian thoughts and avoiding the inverted form of hidden power. Those who use this are ignorant to the real spiritual power. They may think they have it, but they do not. And when we see this minority in their true light, their power falls away from them. I now believe that the greatest psyop of all are the psyops themselves. All psyops, from pedophilia, politics, flat earth, Tartaria, the whole lot. When we see the ridiculous complexity of the breadcrumbs the world issues, we understand that these issues are not meant to be fixed, and are never-ending, never addressed, and all different forms of distraction designed to stop us understanding who we truly are. All distractions from us understanding this, that we're immortal beings connected to spirit. On such large scales as flat earth, debate, Tartaria, still unnecessary distractions, we realise that the first is all based on perception of the individual, and the second may be just written into our simulation as further dungeon programming. While I do believe we're motionless in this plane within this Dyson shell construct, jacked in by our central nervous system to make the simulation seem real, our main objective is to understand the trick, break free from the panic room scenario we've agreed to be in, and manifest this realization as we die so we can go to the next level of this game, or the infinite self. The Divine Spirit has given us the opportunity to experience the concepts of mortality, appreciation of nature and experiences using our five senses, with the ultimate reward of finally understanding that God or Spirit is not individual and external from ourselves at all. The demiurge or artificial intelligence X has employed huge numbers of tactics to distract us from this truth, and we've got to continue distancing ourselves from that and make our journeys through this experience to one experience to another. So the ultimate affirmation position is therefore that of a conscious union with the source of life as the starting point for all things, both in the universe and ourselves as an individual. We are the infinite in miniature. It's always there, and it works within us if we recognize it. And as no power alters the law of our own minds, but a suggestive power that knows the law that can use it, if we understand that our subconscious minds are always susceptible to suggestion itself, we are less likely to be corrupted by it. So we can start with affirmations that spirit is our center and we are susceptible to subconscious suggestions. And if we begin by consciously applying it to everything we do, using this as our starting point, this is the simple law of logic. Whatever we start with will manifest itself down the sequence from where it begins. Starting with red, we can make orange and pink, but red will always be the true source. So starting with the affirmation of goodness and love and the subconscious will only allow such suggestions. It's the same power working on a smaller sphere, where the individual is the center, the microcosm, and the macrocosm, where the smaller I am reproduces the precise image of the greater. I am what I am, and I may be what I will to be. Universal Spirit continues to press forward in a manifestation of itself through the individual, and to lose sight of this provides limitations. But we must remember that we are the same universal principle in a particular manifestation. Therefore, our source of intelligence, power, and purpose is the universal self. I am, therefore I can, therefore I will be. Just throwing up a couple of screenshots for you to look at. Because we're going to get to knowing and willing and energizing and thoughts and desires. So I thought I'd just throw that out there just to have a quick flick through as we continue. I will come back to it. We must harmonize the life of expression with a life of purpose. And by finding and realizing the source of highest purposes, we also find that the life of fullest expression exists. We gradually grow into the habit of finding this inspiring presence within ourselves and realizing its forward movement as the ultimate determining factor in mental action. It will become second nature to us to have all our plans based on spirit, that a great harmony will come into our lives, where disagreeable manifestations will disappear, and better controlling things into what we desire will become present and second nature, to manifest the world as I want it to be. We cannot travel within and stand still without, and we shall receive what we earn, no more, no less. We must forever remember that I am is one, and there are not two spirits. The conscious mind, in all the different directions it takes, is only one mind, expressing itself as our own individuality, not just through it. Affirmative power, or the judgment of something to be true, can be wielded by the process of thought. Hence, we need to regulate our thinking. And so think affirmative forces into forms which are the products of our own thought. We mentally conceive the form through truth and think life into it. This must always be the nature of the creative process on what forever scale. From the grandest universal cosmic mind or the individual mind, the difference is only the degree, not the kind. The actual externalization of this is the result of something more powerful than merely intellectual understanding. It involves the inner mental state, or the emotional understanding of ourselves. It is the self which we feel ourselves to be, and that understanding is created by ourselves based on past knowledge. And so our thoughts must be so grounded in knowledge that we feel the truth of it. Thus we are able to produce in ourselves the mental attitude of feeling which corresponds to the condition which we wish to externalize. We cannot manifest a different type of life that is not within ourselves. We can't give what we haven't got. Conversely, we can never stop creating by thinking life into things. We can't stop doing that, and the mental machinery keeps moving, and it's up to us to determine what is created. If we don't do this, we bring life to sickness, sorrow, trouble, and limitations. We must manifest the positive and not the negative. Without substance or affirmative thought, we have nothing, and thus we must exhibit control over our thoughts. Do not think of circumstances which cannot be processed and thought differently of, but think from the interior standpoint where there are no circumstances yet. The undifferentiated cell, Create a cause with purpose from inward and let the circumstances take care of themselves. All answers are inward spirit, then cause create. The outside man, effect to circumstance negate. That means not thinking of the circumstances, the facts or conditions of an event, but the facts and circumstances of health, of wealth, of peace. But think of health and peace itself, and let the circumstances take care of themselves. As Jason would put it, why put in circumstances when the construct or oversoul is going to grant you access to what you're trying to manifest, what you're living in the future, what you see yourself to be? Why provide it difficulty? When let them make up the circumstances, let it make up the circumstances itself. Peace, not peace because of it. So we're thinking peace, not that peace because of this, because of that, if I do this. Let's just think peace. We think life into fullness without the conditions. Think life, illumination, harmony, prosperity, and happiness rather than the conditions needed for them. These will then enter our lives as living forces and won't leave because they are a natural part of our living being. There are two types of submission. Submission to superior force and submission to superior truth. One is weakness, one is strength. Higher thought combats this doctrine of submission. The progress to liberty surely involves acquiring the habit of submission and superior truth. This requires us to rearrange truths previously processed by the new truth and cannot be put out of sight. But if we fully understand our identity with spirit, there's no real submission, but rather a natural process of growth. It's not movement in weakness, rather the gathering of selves in increasing strength. We are continually bombarded in schools, media, and advertising about the incompleteness of man and the imperfections. This is why there's sorrow. This is why there's sickness and trouble. However, every individual consciousness is an infinite reflection of spirit. This is the self. And so we need to not go outside of ourselves for anything. We just need to draw on that part of ourselves which is definite to realize any intention of individual consciousness. We must draw from the infinite because I am. So we can draw from the infinite because the power is there. We draw from the infinite because I can. In forming man, the creative principle, therefore, must have produced a perfect work, and any conception of ourselves as imperfect is a result of our own ignorance of what we really are. Our advance, therefore, does result. If our advance is this means does not involve having something new added to us, but in learning to bring into action powers that already exist in us. Where do we seek these powers? In ourselves. To seek powers from any outside source is to make affirmation of weakness, and the affirmation of weakness will only result. We say that every person is a concentration of spirit into individual consciousness, but if so, then each individual consciousness must find spirit to be the infinite expression of itself. It's the part of the self that we often omit when contemplating who we are. Our advance, therefore, does not involve having something new added to us, but in learning to bring into action powers that already exist in us. Again, just reading straight. This is direct quote from Troward now. Where do we seek these powers? In ourselves. To seek powers from any outside source is to make affirmation of our weakness, and the affirmation will only create this result. If there's any feeling of tension by not realizing this concept of our wholeness, we are placing a barrier somewhere and it needs to be removed. The truth is, there is no barrier. This tension is the feeling that we're not using our whole being. We're trying to make half do the work of the whole, yet the wholeness will always exist, and the whole is protesting against our attempts of the self to use the other half against itself. And when we realize that our concentration out of the infinite also implies our expansion into it, we shall see that our whole and the self includes both the concentration and the expansion. And seeing this first intellectually, we shall gradually learn to use this knowledge practically and bring our whole into being. I expand into spirit and it concentrates into me. The self includes the infinite. By combining thought and experience, theory and practice, we'll gradually find that there is a constant action and reaction between the infinite and the individual, like the circulation of blood from the heart around the body and back again. A pulsation of vital energy, natural and free from strain and exertion. This thing is life and cannot be suggested or described. It is unique to every individual and a matter of personal experience. This life will remove all fear and provide guidance from within. The principle of guidance, which gives value to all of our powers. It doesn't look to an external source, but instead comes from our innermost being, with a confidence to proceed with our plans successfully by providing a trusted order of attainment. We can't clear hurdles unless we first learn to jump. And we are guided we have to jump first. So for plans to succeed successfully, we must trust our progress and use what we've already developed wisely. From the infinite mind to superior intelligence, we receive guidance and awakening to consciousness of our mysterious internal powers. And they'll sooner or later take place and will result in our using them whether we understand the law of development or not. Everything depends on our recognition that this superior intelligence provides the guidance we need. Thoughts are things, vibrations of different intensities, and as we will ourselves, we will a thing. By the thought of the spirit of guidance, we will it to do this, to guide us. We're going to see that with our hands gives us the actions to complete something that's made by the will, our willpower, our doing, our giving out. Our mind provides the being, the taking in, the consciousness and perception. And there's a link between the knowing, which is our thoughts, the willing, which is our desires, and the energizing, which is our actions. And this is the self manifested in three ways. The whole self knows and thinks, the whole self wills and desires, and the whole self energizes and acts. These functions are not separate, because when he who knows or thinks, he wills and desires, he energizes and acts. If he wills and desires, he acts and knows. If he energizes and acts, he knows and wills. This will gradually become more clear as we work through the other analogies in this book and go on to the Besant book, which is part 2. Now we're dealing with the why and the nuts and bolts behind it. And when we get to this type of analogy in part 2, we'll be talking about the how and how everything really links together. Like the Spirit of truth which shall guide us into truth, the desire for guidance will guide. It's the sincere desire of us to find truth that supplies it. Truth first and power second is the order which cannot be inverted. Practical is he who realizes that the true real must be manifested, brought into existence, before it can be shown to be so, and so achieves power by realizing that power comes from within, and fits his outward action into his knowledge, displaying his faith in his works and his deeds. Balance hands and actions with thought and mind. In everything, there is this essential and the incidental, the nucleus, the reason, the purpose, the energizing component, and the other is that which gathers around the nucleus to take form from it. True knowledge involves distinguishing the two from each other. In whatever we do, there are always two factors. Ourselves, which is the self, and the matter to be dealt with, the not-self. These factors fluctuate as to what becomes the essential, making the other incidental, depending on our conditions. So one will be the essential, the other will be the ramifications or the incidental, and it's up to us to decide the purpose of which one we find more important. So in every matter, we always find the essential energizing factor and an incidental factor, which is shaped by the energy involved. And this is an essential concept. We therefore never escape choosing our essential and our incidental factor. And once we choose as the essential, the incidental is determined by default. If we make the mistake of assuming the wrong order of these and reversing the true position, we make the wrong one our support, which may provide a weak platform rather than support that we need. But the center of a man's life is within himself, and this is the energizing center because this is the center of the universe. There really is no energy in our universe but what comes from ourselves initially, and the power of which appears to reside in our surroundings is derived entirely from our own mind. Now remember and realize that life that flows into us from the universal life is at every moment new and undifferentiated. Doesn't know what it's going to be yet. It's ready to specialize to our needs, and ours to exterminate in any way we will. And this manifestation of the eternal life principle in ourselves is the platform from which we control our surroundings. We shall not take our surroundings too seriously, and as soon as we feel the weight of the world impede on us, it's mastering us, not we mastering it. Touch things more lightly. Light touch isn't weakness, it's power in reserve. A firm hold of an instrument, but the delicate use of it. And as nothing can stop us thinking, we can think what we please, and if thinking is to form, then we can form what we please. Is it true to think so of form? Yes, of course it is. This means that we provide our own limitations when forming through thought, like our growth. If we think that conditions outside our thought have power over us, then we think power into them. Think how it will be, how it is. Think how that it already exists. Desire is the force behind all things. It's the mind sinking to manifest itself in some form which as yet only exists as thought. It is the principle of creation because desire is the origin of willing something into existence, which doesn't exist yet. Desire is the innermost of manifestation and life. Desire is the innermost of manifestation of life. The desire and will and its fulfillment are bound together as cause and effect. So then, is there any other creative power than thought? And if so, where is it and what is it? Philosophy and religion, they both lead us to the truth that in the beginning, there was no other creative power than spirit. And the only mode of activity we can attribute to spirit is thought, because any action, will, desire, energizing activity, all originate in knowing and thought. My purpose is the will to form. From the poem, and all willing and forming originates in thought. But what of the logic? We're surrounded by all sorts of circumstances that we do not desire. This occurs because we give life through thought to that which we fear. We constantly manifest restraints by thought and ignorance in the wrong directions. But not fear. But fear not. But not fear. But fear not. Doubt not. Just going back to the poem for a second. Here we go. My purpose is the will to find, to form, and all willing and forming originates in thought. No doubt or fear, just faith and trust. Truth sets us free. Truth is what is. If we recognize that truth is now, as it was and as it shall be, then it provides pure liberty, because the logic dictates that if this be the case, we are free already. We just don't know it yet. We don't appreciate it yet. We know it. The only way to progress is by following an ideal that is always a stage ahead of us. But this growth must be based on an expansion of something that already exists in us. And this implies our being ourselves, because where we actually are is the starting point. Without jumping ahead so some ideal future exists. We are the starting point, even though we are more than we propose ourselves to be, and use a force greater than we believe ourselves to be. The outer shell is the growth of individuality, not what we are not yet, and this is contained within us. We should only build on what has risen to the surface. We can and we will become a more powerful, but we need a continuous growth based on who we are now. And a straight path to can is to endorse. This doesn't require deep studies, hard labours, or weary journeys to attain this. It is the innermost of ourselves, our intuition, our imagination. Imagination, intuition, to develop what I am. It is all there in ourselves now, enough to satisfy all desires, but is patiently awaiting our recognition for its manifestation. Recognition and growth cannot be forced. We are not creating power, we are learning how to recognize and use it. And at some stage in the infinite, in the future, we are worthy of being chosen as an errant soul to help develop this construct, our experiences, the oversoul's experience, and thus inhabit future realms of higher order. It's already happened. We must have already passed this test and been able to utilize all these powers and deemed worthy, and now we're just learning how to do it properly. With patience, it'll happen. Sometimes I get flustered, and this is the ebbs and flows of what I was talking about with motivation, influx of information, and then taking a step back and letting the inside guide. And it's really just spirit breaking, us breaking new grounds into spirit. But a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. It's important to know that eyes are open to translate it to common sense, not to commit the errors from within that were formerly committed on the without. There is a vital reality in things other than what is thought-centered now. To be so absorbed in speculative ideas and not to be able to give them practical application in daily life is to allow our highest thoughts to evaporate in dreams. Again, it is a vital reality in things other than what is thought-centered now. To be absorbed in the whole process of this, but give them no practical application, to not put them into practice in our daily lives, is to allow these thoughts to just evaporate in dreams. It's our job now to continue, no matter how difficult, and it's difficult. There is no inside without an outside, no outside without an inside, and the great secret in life is learning to see things in their wholeness and to realize the inside and outside simultaneously. All answers inward spirit, then cause create, the outside man, effect to circumstance negate. Each of them without the other does not portray real existence, and they are connected together by cause and effect. Nature does not separate them because they are inseparable. Inner principles translate themselves into familiar conditions of the outward things by which we are surrounded. Initial analysis provides a way to see that cause causes a particular effect with respect to manifestations and how things are brought into existence, but this isn't sufficient. We must also learn to calculate how these produced effects relate to the world of already existing effects and how each will modify each other so that we better appreciate the causes of where they came from. Vitally important is this fact that reality consists both of an inside and an outside of everything, short of realizing that reality is a wholeness, is illusion on one side or the other. The inside is the generating principle, the outside is the generating condition. Love is the interior power above all, and must be kept alive by keeping a hold on the exterior life as being equally real in the inward principle from which it was manifested. Our outer principles reflect inner life. It's a mistake to suppose that we need to restrict ourselves to develop greater power, whether it be material or mental, because spirit is infinite and good work is not just for us. Faith must be real and in tune with our honest beliefs, or otherwise it is the opposite to spirit and paralyzes our efforts. If we clearly realize that our creative power in ourselves is unlimited, then there's no reason to limit the extent to which we may enjoy what we can create by means of it, because we are drawing from the infinite. We never need to be afraid of taking more than our share if it's an infinite. The fearless to power is the creative force. This is not where the danger lies. The danger is looking at our manifestations. Due to our abilities as the riches instead of the creative power itself. It'd be a shame to look at what we have done and manifested as like the beauty. The beauty is really the creative source of spirit itself. We must enter into the spirit of it and realize that the real wealth is the connection with spirit itself, the spirit of opulence. Do not think money, for example, as such because it's only one example of opulence. Rather think opulence itself, and it will flow to us from everywhere, whether it be in the form of other things or other things that are more opulent than cash itself. And again, we must not think of the circumstances for opulence, because this would only limit how spirit would supply it. The spirit of opulence is part of the spirit of life and involves circulation. Our attention should be directed to giving rather than receiving, because it will be circulated. To be misers stops the circulation. Rather, we should act like distribution centers, where the more we receive, the more we can distribute, and then the more we circulate, the greater the inflow. Accumulate riches, not just material, to give to others. Stopping the outlet stops the current or flow. Even with a zero net balance, opulent giving can be in other forms. Love. Produce intellectual or spiritual opulence and give them that, because the opulent cycle will return to you when needed. Not just the physical. My purpose embraces nature filled with empathy. I am filled with beauty to give to thee. We can tell by statutes of figures of ancient past, before resets and recent times, that those regarded as full of beauty were not deemed such based on superficial things as looks. Beauty is not superficial if regarded as the supremest living quality of thought and overflowing love, because it indicates the presence of infinite power and living quality of thought. Beauty is the coordination of all the powers of being. When viewed from without, beauty is expressed by the artist, the poet, Nature, the sculptor or architect, appealing to our emotions and innermost feelings of the heart, calling a response from within, asking us to respond from within as to what was perceived from without. When viewed from within, beauty is our realm of the calmer reasoner and analyst, which is an appreciation of an understanding of the without. Both realize the wonder of what expressed without, having their roots of thought from within. Thus the artist and the thinker both find that the only true beauty proceeds naturally from the actual construction of that which it expresses. The intuition of desire of the artist comes from within, and so do the thoughts of the thinker. Repeating. In everything there is an essential and an incidental. The nucleus, the reason, the purpose, the energizing component of the other gathers around the nucleus to take form from it. What is expressed is not added on as a later idea, but something pre-existing in the original idea. So, let's have a quick sip. So the test of beauty is what it actually expresses. Is it merely a coated veneer laid on from without that can be removed? Is it a true representation of what lies beneath the surface? Does the without truly represent the within? When we strip away the cover and look to within, the inner meaning of beauty is revealed, and we find we have gained a new standard for the guidance of our own lives. Excuse me. We must begin to use this process, and we have learnt this process through nature. No work is complete till we have carried it to some final outcome of beauty, whether it be intellectual, spiritual, or material. Is the intention of creation good? What is the most beautiful form which I can express the good I intend? My purpose embraces nature filled with empathy. Beauty is a true expression of the good, the law of perfect thought, and may involve welfare of millions to the simple words spoken to a child. Kind expression originates in kind thought. Giving without beauty is ungracious, and beauty without giving is worthless nonsense. However, looking for the beauty we have yet found, we must beware of missing the beauty that already exists. Harmony within will provide amazing manifestations of beauty without. By loveliness of perfect deeds moves strong than all poetic thought. Beauty becomes the expression of living power. I am free, with beauty to give to thee, spiritual liberty. Who would not want a greater and brighter vitality in ourselves and less restrictions in our surroundings? This, who would want a greater and brighter vitality in ourselves and less restrictions in the surroundings? This can be accomplished through thought, but many get disillusioned with this. We are told to change our modes of thought and change conditions will follow. But like putting salt on a bird's tail to catch a bird when we could simply put our hands out and touch the bird. If we can change our thinking, can we not change our circumstances? But how then can we change our thinking and thereby change our circumstances? Sure, we can change our reality tunnels by imagining what we are in the future or near future, and the construct will adapt and make it so. Projecting reality so that it manifested after pattern breaking to receive attention. I've done this and it works. And forever growing. It's an amazing process. But this is not the focus here as such. But but let's look at a technique briefly anyway. We are in a reality somewhere else. Here it's just a mirrored truth through fictions. This thing we call life is just an experience within a simulation. So if we act as it is, so it will be. What is not what it may be. It's saying it's not what it's not. Act as if the solution already exists and the end result is already secure. And all the circumstances allow spirit to fill in the dots. It is so it will be. Thought that great effort is required only provides difficulties. Imagine the end result as though the conditions have already been met. The relationship with our oversoul or spirit requires faith and trust, as does any relationship, and spirit will respond, so that we can manifest the world as I want it to be. We are builders living in others' reality tunnels, but we can create worlds for us and for others. In your mind, for example, take a picture of the future and imagine that scenario, taking time to contemplate how it would feel, smell, touch, look like, sound like. Create it in detail. Thank Spirit that it's already been done. Feel the gratitude because now we are here. We exist. It exists. Move our avatars in that direction of this future like it does already exist. It's now in the field. Our reality tunnels have been altered. So leave the thought behind without doubt or fear. No doubt or fear, just faith and trust. Be one with Source and make robust. We can see the cause and the effect being externalized after a result. We see desired results, but the initial difficulty has to be overcome, or all of this reduces to mere paper theory. With uncertainty, we have fear, and there will be an undesired result through the negative affirmation force, creating the very things we fear themselves. Nothing. In so doing, if we refuse to recognize the existence of evil at all, then good will be the only thing. If we refuse to admit that hate exists, love will become our only thing. It's the only thing left in our reality of being. Entering into the spirit of it, a spiritless attempt is sure to be failure. The greatest secret in life is livingness, of which we can never get enough, nor should we want it. Spirit is invigorating. So, understanding is complete when we not only understand what something is, but when we also understand what something is not. Power grows from this knowledge because it enables us to balance the affirmations of positive and negative against each other with flexibility. Not too fluid, not too rigid. Uniting these two extremes for the desired result. Solidify the fluid and dissolve the rigid. Thus, to gain better understanding of getting into the spirit of it, some idea of the negative or not spirit must be developed. Similar to the self or not self. Here we look to mechanism as the opposite of spirit. We often look at the mechanical side of things by preference. From carving wood to building a social system, we endorse the mechanism of it rather than the spirit of it. Yet the man who recognizes that natural law determines the mechanism, and not vice versa, will bloom. The man who studies the principle first, knowing that when it's properly achieved it will present all that is needed to bring the mechanism into practical use. There is a mechanical attitude of mind which judges everything by the limitations of past experiences, allowing nothing for the fact that those experiences were based on ignorance of spiritual law which we hadn't achieved yet. The reality of the body and physical world of facts are real, but we shall learn, we hopefully will, to learning process that we do that. Lack of power has been the cause of this. We must realize that the primary physical cause is a result of the secondary spiritual cause. However, neither can be denied because both spiritual and mechanical, the self and the not self, are needed to perfect the whole. But there must be an inside to produce the outside, where spirit, or the self, in the inside is the creator utilizing the mechanical of the not self. To enter into the spirit of anything is to make yourself one in thought with the creative principle that is the center of it. Then why not go to the center at once and enter the spirit of life? If we find this within ourselves, and in the same proportion we find it everywhere else. Affirm this continually in your thoughts. A direct quote and direct process from Troward. Affirm this continually in your thoughts. The livingness of any task is the whole of what you are. Life is the one thing that is, in you and around you. Be one with it, and all the old limitations will pass. Thought will be limitless creative power, and you yourself are behind the thought, controlling and directing it with knowledge for any purpose. Love motivates, and wisdom plans. It does indeed. Our hands are the instruments by which all work is done, literally, mechanically, artistically, in the household, but we know that reality, all this work is really the work of the mind, with willpower at the center of our system, which first determines what will be done at all, and then set the hands to work to do it, where the mind and hand become one, and the hand is the mind working. Now think of this analogy of how we relate to the universal mind. Our hands do the work of the individual mind, and we do the work of the universal mind. And because spirit is in each of us, the connection becomes clearer. If we lose one of these, and our each individuality or personal will is the hands and the mind working together in a wholeness. If we lose one of these, we lose either moral or mental balance. We need to remain centered in personal will. If there's no willpower, there's no backbone. If there's too much doing, there won't be enough perception. And we lose touch with the heart. We as the hands live and work because the central mind lives and works with us. Remember that the body is the mind, not the mind is in the body. If we rely solely on willpower, we lose connection between our hands and minds. But if we realize that the will is the power by which we give out, and that everything out implies a corresponding taking in, doing things with our hands that are guided by our heart and mind. It's a whole ball, it's a network. In so doing, we must cultivate our receptive conscious minds too, so that our willpower becomes intensified because the whole power of the infinite is there to back it up. Balance hands and actions with thought and mind. Action as a whole and is to be done as a harmonious whole, and if there is an abnormal action, we should find where it is and remove it to maintain a one center of control. If we don't do this, our understanding in mental science will only lead us to a confused labyrinth of principles. The central controlling principle is the will, and we must always remember that other principles we have mentioned exist only as instruments. The will is the true self, of which they are all functions, and progress consists of increasing understanding of this fact. It is the will that says, I am. When the enlightened will has learnt to identify itself perfectly with the limitless power of knowledge, judgment, and creative thought, which are all at its disposal, then the individual will have attained a wholeness, and all limitations will have passed away forever. Every state of our consciousness, active or passive, should be the result of distinct purpose, adopted by our own free will. And the passive state should be under as much control of the will as the active. It's the lack of purpose which deprives us of power. It's a lack of purpose which deprives us of power. This is why I wrote my poem, and I wanted to get clear in my mind just what my spiritual purpose is. Finding your spiritual purpose. Every state of our consciousness, active or passive, should be the result of distinct purpose adopted by our own free will, and the passive state should be under as much control of the will as the active. It's the lack of will and the lack of purpose which deprives us of power. The higher and more clearly designed our purpose, the greater stimulus we have for realizing our control over all our faculties for achieving this. But in this, there should be no strain. Will is not an unnatural force. It is the leading our powers down natural channels by intuitively recognizing the direction that leads to the increase of life. So we have leading ideas when it comes to higher thought, that man controls his circumstances instead of them but controlling him. And higher thought involves whatever teaches us to rely on power borrowed from an outside source outside of ourselves is not higher thought at all. And whatever explained to us the infinite source of our own inherent power is higher thought. It's time to think. There is an absolute oneness of creator and creation, cause and effect, and nothing may contradict this. By the oneness of cause and effect, it is meant that effect, or the man, consists only of what cause, the creator, is. But a part, which is the individual personality, is not therefore equal in size to the whole. This is the greatest importance. Once we wrongly admit there is any power outside of ourselves, we have only sown the seed for fear and entire ruin of love, life, and liberty. We are it itself. We must contend earnestly both with ourselves and outwardly, and never, from now on to all eternity, admit for a single instant any thought which opposes this. This is the basic truth of being. It is so, so it will be. It will be. It's already happened. All the power is inside of me. We're connected to Source. We're connected to Spirit. We are a oneness. Imagination, intuition, develop what I am. Based on past thought, our intuition guides us through imagination to develop the I am, the everything. And for power, we draw from the infinite because we can. To manifest the world as I want it to be. Change the world to how you want it to be. I expand into spirit and it concentrates into me. My purpose in this journey, my spiritual purpose, is the will to find, balance our hands and actions with our thought and mind. The answers are inward. There's no need for anywhere to go anywhere else. Then create a cause based on that and let the outside man, the effect, display this to circumnavigate the circumstances. My purpose embraces nature, filled with empathy. I am free, with beauty, to share with thee, which is our duty. Spiritual liberty is freeness and understanding. Being fearless to the power is the creative force. We haven't got a fear of using too much of our power because it's infinite. And there's nothing to stop us now. So a straight path to can is to endorse. Without doubt or fear, only faith and trust. Be one with Source and make robust, make it stronger. The next, when we look at Annie Besant and the next idea of thought and how it works and how to improve the idea of concentration and how to get all this thought into practice, the next is very good instructional tool. I'm blown away with the next. Don't miss the next part. It's absolutely mind-boggling, fascinating, helpful, everything all in one. When we tunnel our feeling and create and work out what vibrations are, what consciousness actually is, the nuts and bolts of it, how to do it. We tunnel the feeling of vibrate with knowing. That feeling that you get when you know something, when something clicks. We need to tunnel those thoughts of that vibration, of the self, the known, the knower. Forever growing. Hope you've enjoyed. See you in the next part soon. Will only be a few days, I'm hoping. I just needed a little while to get to this stage. It was a lot of growing, a lot of learning. Hope you have a good time. Keep pattern breaking. Keep going, guys. Love to all.